Welcome to the Fit Focus Forum. So today we're going to talk about one of the most misunderstood topics in fitness, and it's something that I talk about with you guys a lot on your feedback. But the feedbacks are brief, so we don't really get to go into it in detail. And it's called progressive overload. Now, this is literally the only way to build muscle and get stronger and make real progress. And I mean that 100%. When I say it, I'm going to say it again. It is literally the only way to make progress and get stronger. You have to overload your body. So what you're going to be getting today is a clear understanding of what progressive overload is and what it's not, why so many people stall out and plateau in their programs or just in their fitness journeys in general, how to overload properly using reps, weight, and tempo. We're going to go into what that means specifically. All right. And then why switching workouts too often could be killing your gains. All right. All right. So what I'm going to do here is just, sorry, I'm changing my view around for a moment. All right, cool. I want to make this fun too, guys. Sometimes I feel like when I do presentations, I'm just droning on, and I am a presenter. So I've been doing this for a while. I don't know if I told you guys it before, but I'm a master educator for Stages Indoor Cycling. And it's a little different when you do it online. When you're interacting with people that are in front of you, there's a lot more facial interactions and it's easier to play games with people and stuff. But I'm going to try to bring some of that in to today's presentation so that it's a little bit more fun. So there's going to be a little bit of audience participation. I'm going to do a little game and an interactive quiz. So, stick around and engage because that's how you're going to get the most out of this. And don't worry, I'm not going to make you guys turn on your cameras or talk if you don't want to. Everything that we're going to be doing is going to be in the chat. Sound good? Everybody give me a thumbs up in the chat. Let's practice. Or one thumbs up in the chat.
Gotta figure out how to do it on a phone. Hold on. Okay, there it is.
Gotcha. All right. It's all good. So got it. There we go. And you're going to see there's a reaction right there. All right. So you should just be able to go in the chat and put in your reaction. So and you can also use your keyboard if you're on your computer as well. All right. So, you tap that little, if you're on an Apple Mac, that little world looking thing in the bottom left, it'll bring up all of your emojis. So, all right, let's get into it, guys. I'm going to do a little warm-up game with you. It's called Progress or Plateau. All right. So before we dive in, we're going to start with a little audience check-in. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much stronger, fitter, or more muscular do you feel compared to 6 months ago? Drop your number in the chat. This is easier than the emojis. All right, good. I've got a 7, a 10, a 7, a 6, a 7. Very nice. I like it. All right, you know what, guys? Those are really great. If you're somewhere between a 7 and a 10, I'm curious, what's been working for you? Can I have one or two of you just give me a reason why you gave me anywhere between a 7 and a 10? Why you feel stronger, why you feel like you're making progress. And it doesn't have to be progressive overload. You can tell me, I feel like my diet is helping me improve. I'm getting better sleep. I'm just curious for a couple comments on why you feel like you're making progress.
Oh, well, I guess I go. I guess one reason why I feel like I'm making progress is because for the first time I've been getting like compliments on my body and I'm not used to it.
Ooh.
So like, it was like, oh, you look great. You've been working out. And like, it was like, I'm kind of like a bashful person. So it kind of takes me by surprise, but it lets me know something's working because I'm following the plan. So yeah, that's kind of getting that feedback from other people.
That's wonderful. Hey, you know what? It's always good to have somebody recognize the hard work that you're putting in, right? And it doesn't need to be a compliment on even your looks or your body. It could be a compliment like, oh my God, you have so much more energy lately, right? Or I've noticed that you've been a lot more, with it at our meetings in the mornings. These are all things that are a result of putting all of the pieces together that we've been working on. Increase in ability to lift heavier. Love that. And we got another one that says body image and shape. All right. And listen, we're gay men. Regardless of what our goals are, there's always body image and shape involved in that, right? It's part of our community. I think sometimes it can be a little bit toxic, but it can also be healthy. If you're looking at yourself in a way where you're like, I look better, my shape is better, I've got a better body image, it's good psychologically, but it also means that you're making yourself healthier as well too. So I always want you to keep that in mind. Wanting to look better doesn't have to be a negative thing. And I know like a lot of fitness people talk about it that way. You should be more focused on health than you should be on looks. Having a nice balance between the two of those, I am a firm believer that that's a wonderful thing to have. And we had nobody that was below a 5. All right. So that's great. I was going to, ask you what's holding back, but everybody gave some really good responses. A lot of times people think the reason they're not progressing is because they need more variety or a new program or that they're just not genetically built to grow. But 9 times out of 10, that's not the problem. The real issue is that they're not actually following a structured plan for long enough to get progress. Okay. So let's start out with exactly what progressive overload is. All right. So the simple definition here is that progressive overload, it is the process of increasing the stimulus on your muscles over time so that they can continue to adapt and grow and get stronger. So why does this work? Because your body is insanely good at adapting to stress. So if you keep lifting the same weight for the same reps, your muscles are going to stop needing to grow because they've already mastered the challenge, right? This is why most people plateau. They're just repeating workouts and they're not progressing them. So I want to talk first about the SAID principle or the SAID principle. So SAID stands for specific adaptation to imposed demands. I'm going to say it again, specific adaptation to imposed demands. So basically, your body only changes in response to the stress that you put on it. And if you don't increase that stress, you won't see continued progress. So, the key takeaway here is that the only way to keep improving is to make your muscles work harder than they did before. So let's talk now about how to actually do that. I know I've mentioned this to all, if not most of you, in at least one or a few of your feedbacks when I've made your area to improve on your workouts overload. If I say that, that means that you're doing great. You've hit all of your marks for the week. You've checked all of your boxes. And I want to say, if you haven't, that's okay too. But that's why I write that there, because you're nailing it. And now you really need to focus on what this means, how we progressively overload and get stronger. So most people think that progressive overload only means lifting heavier weights. That's not true. Okay. There are 3 ways that you can progressively overload, and they all work just as well. So let's start with the simplest one that everybody thinks about first, right? Increasing in weight, right? This is intensity overload. So that means if you lifted 100 pounds for 8 reps last week, you're going to try to lift 105 pounds this week for the same amount of reps. And when I say the same amount of reps, I mean getting to the last set and being able to do the last repetition number 8, with good form and feeling like you couldn't do 1 or 2 more without losing your form. That's the feeling that you want to get. If you were to put that 9th rep on there, then it would say to you, okay, cool, I'm starting to lose form. My back's starting to hurt. I'm feeling something weird, so I'm going to stop. That's how you judge if you're actually maxing out. And there is a whole lesson plan that you guys watched or went through at the beginning of your programs. So your goal is to slowly increase the resistance while keeping good form. All right. So an example would be bench pressing 185 pounds for 5 reps, and then next week trying to get 190 pounds for 5 reps, or maybe squatting 225 for 6, and then aiming for 230 the next time. The common mistake here is going too heavy too fast. All right. And that goes into what I was just talking about with good form. We don't want to hurt ourselves. I think, a lot of us have, injured ourselves at least slightly here and there. I know I have when I've been working out, we're not paying attention or progressing too fast. If you jump from 100 pounds to 150 pounds, you're going to wreck your form and you're going to risk injury, right? So all of these increases in your weight should be small and consistent. And that's going to equal long-term gains. All right. Does anybody have any questions on overloading with weight? I think that's pretty much the clearest one for everybody. Cool. And like I said, you don't need to turn on your microphone if you don't want to chat out loud. You can always put the chat. I've got it open over here in the corner, so I'll see if you leave a message. And you don't have to wait for me to ask if you have a question. Throw it in the chat. And when I get to the end of each section, I'm happy to jump in and answer those questions. All right. So second one, and some of you might know this already. This is the second thing that a lot of people think about to increase volume. It's volume overload, and it happens by increasing your repetitions. So that means if you did 8 repetitions last week, you're aiming for 9 to 10 repetitions this week before adding weight. All right. So it's always in the ultimate result should always be to add weight, right? We're progressively overloading. We want to get stronger. We want our muscles to be able to lift more. But if we're not positive that our form is good, right, then it's a good idea to maybe just add 9 reps instead of 8 reps this week. And then if you could get all the way to that 4th set, if you've got 4 sets programmed for you, and you could do that 9th rep and you have good form, then you can go into next week being positive or confident that you can throw that 5 pounds on and still probably hold your form. Now, a quick note here. When you throw weight on for your next week, right, to add that 5 pounds, and then you're going back to that 8 reps, you put on that 5 pounds, and on the last set, you can only get 6 reps before losing form. That is the weight you stick with, by the way, until you can get to that last rep with good form, all right? We don't want to start adding reps, or we don't want to start adding weight until we're confident that we can get to that last repetition on that last set. Just a little side note there, because I don't think I put it anywhere else in the presentation. So as I said before, this method is really great if you're not quite ready to go heavier, but you still want to challenge your muscles, all right? So again, simple examples here. Last week you squatted 225 for maybe 6 reps. This week you squat 225 for 7 reps. And then once you can do 7 or 8 reps at the same weight, then you're going to increase your weight, all right? Just a little recap. So common mistake here, don't just do random rep ranges, okay? This is why we have the app. This is why we record everything. You want to track your reps so that you know when to progress, just like you track your weights. So when you know when to progress. And in the Safe and Fitness app, after the first week of lifting in a new program, you're going to see to the right that it's going to give you repetitions in your weight from the week before so that you're very clear if you're ready to progress on what that should look like, all right? Do you guys have any questions on increasing the reps or volume overload before I move on? All right, cool. If you think of anything, just drop it in the chat. The third one, probably not as much of a common knowledge as the first two, slowing down the reps, or the tempo, excuse me. So slowing down the tempo in the eccentric phase of the movement. And I'm going to explain what that means in a moment. But first, I want to tell you what this is called. It's called time under tension, all right? So your muscles don't really know weight. They know tension, all right? And if you control the movement more, you increase the stress without adding weight. So you can do anywhere from a 3 to 5 second negative. That's the lowering phase. And this increases muscle fiber recruitment by slowing the movement down. So it's another option if you don't feel like you're ready to add that weight to progress and continue to work on your form before making it heavier, okay? So I want to talk about eccentric versus concentric phases. Have you guys heard that number before, those words before? If you have, give me a thumbs up or something in the chat, or a yes. Eccentric and concentric. Okay, cool. So we've got some there. Nope. All right, that's good. You're going to learn something new today. That's actually my favorite answer. So concentric phases, and this is just the simplest way to demonstrate. I promise I'm not trying to show off. So if you're doing a arm curl, right? And it also allows me to be in the camera. And I think my arm is a little bit out. So when you're doing an arm curl and you do this is the concentric phase. And what that means is that the muscle fibers are shortening, all right? That is what makes the muscle active when you're lifting a weight, when you're lifting your groceries, anything like that. You're doing a concentric movement, okay? Now, the eccentric phase is when your muscle fibers are lengthening, all right? So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about time under tension. So you can do your arm curls like this. There's nothing wrong with that, right? As long as you're finding some way to progressively overload. But let's say you want to do some time under tension. From here, you would be 1, 2, 3. Bottom, maybe explode up. 1, 2, 3. You can even make it as long as 5 seconds, right? Now, here's the thing. When you start to do slow eccentric work like this, and I have programmed some of this for some of you guys, not for everybody, because, I kind of keep this in programs that are a little bit more advanced, just because you've got so much to concentrate on already. You're going to notice that the weight that you're using is going to feel like it's 1,000 pounds by the end of that set, okay? And even sometimes when you're doing slow eccentric work, if you slow it down to like 5 seconds, you might even need to lighten the weight, right? Because you're not going to be able to get all the way to that last repetition. if you do decide to do this, it's good to stick with this for a long amount of time, right? Just like anything else. So from week to week, doing that slow eccentric, going 3 seconds, and all of you are welcome to do this on any of the exercises. I would maybe choose 1 or 2 to start with if you want to try practicing this. Stick with it from week to week. And then you're going to be able to progress the weight that you're using for the slow eccentric. And then you're going to be surprised as hell at how strong you are when you go back to that explosive movement back and forth. Does that make sense, guys? Darian, I can see you, so give me a thumbs up. All right, awesome. All right, so, just some more examples of this. Instead of dropping into a squat 1 second, take like 3 to 4 seconds to lower down into the squat and then explode back up. All right. And instead of rushing through a bench press, which I know I do sometimes because I just want to get that weight off my chest, lower the bar slowly as you're coming down and then pop up as quickly as you can. And again, watch the weight because it's going to feel heavier. So if you're practicing this for the first time on like a barbell chest press, I would definitely make sure that you have a spotter because your muscles are going to react in a different way than they ever have before. Is there a best way to choose which of the 3 to do or personal preference? I would say it's personal preference and also based on how good you feel your form is. I'm going to keep going back to form. Does that make sense, Jeremy? If you've got really good form on something, then like, for instance, I'll give you an example. I'm pretty good at deadlifts. I've been practicing deadlifts for like 20 years. Right now, I'm strength training on my deadlifts. I'm trying to get my weight up as much as possible. I am almost at 4 plates on each side. But what I do is before I add 5 pounds to each side, I will do a week where I program myself for 6 reps at the moment. I'll do a week where I do 8 reps, or excuse me, 7 to 8 reps to make sure that I've got good form. And when I can get to the end of that, I'll know next week I can put 5 pounds on each side without hurting my back. And that's when especially now that I'm in my 40s, what I'm worried about the most, just to make sure that I'm not putting too much tension on my lower back and I'm able to engage my spinal erectors when I'm doing the movement. All right. I would say, it would be a good thing to practice doing a simpler movement, right? Maybe you're doing like a shoulder press and bring it down. Start with dumbbells first before you go into barbell work, because again, the barbell can be a little bit harder to control. If you are starting with barbells, if you're trying to do the slow eccentric work, make sure you have a spotter, or, if you're doing squats, make sure that you have the supports up high enough so that you do have to drop the weight. You don't get yourself into trouble. All right. Does it matter on which action to explode on between eccentric and concentric? Yes, it does. So you explode on the concentric movement. All right. So think about a squat. I'll go back to that definition or that example, excuse me. So when you're going down into a squat, that's actually the reload, right? So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, then you pop out of that squat as fast as possible. You're not going to be able to pop out of a squat as fast as you are going to be able to pop out of a chest press usually. But same thing with the chest press. Eccentric is slow. Concentric is the pop. All right. Cool. All right. So common mistakes here. People rush their reps because it makes the work feel easier. All right. So that's the opposite of what we want. And in doing so, in slowing down the movement, one thing that happens is that you create more micro tears. Has anybody heard about micro tears when you're working out? Give me a yes or a no. We got one yes, we got a no. Sounds horrible, doesn't it? It's actually a good thing, all right? This is actually what's happening when you're lifting weights. So what you're doing is you're creating micro tears in the muscles. And then I'm giving you the very simple, non-scientific explanation for this. If you want me to dive deeper into this, let's talk on the side, or I'll make a resource for you that's a little bit more in depth. So your body needs a cue to build more muscle in a muscle group. So when you create micro tears, your body knows that it needs to build more muscle in that area. And that's what it's all about. So when you're feeling sore because of the micro tears. That makes sense? It's an indication and a cue to your body that you need to get stronger in that area. So it builds more muscle tissue. So I want to talk about common mistakes that kill progress next. All right. So switching programs too often. All right. If you switch your workouts every 3 to 4 weeks, or I'm going to talk about another example in just a moment, your body never has time to adapt and improve. Okay. I think that one of our clients shared in the group chat this week about how he's gotten stronger. And in the past, he changed his workouts up all the time. And because we've been consistent with the workouts, he's been able to progressively overload. He's not on the call today. But if you look in the group chat, you'll see that he commented on that, I think, yesterday. And I was really happy to read that because it's exactly what we're talking about today. Oh, yeah, I responded to him. It was Michael. So you got to stay with a program, minimum 8 weeks, all right, in order to really see the results that you're looking for. Now, I program 8 to 12 weeks usually. You know, if I find that somebody gets bored easily, we'll stick with the 8 weeks because I know that's an issue as well. But if I'm ever programming longer for you guys, I promise it's not because I'm lazy by any means. It is because there is an actual scientific reason for sticking with the program for so long. I have been on my current program for, I'm going to say 17 weeks, and I haven't changed a thing. But I'm a crazy person as well. I don't get bored doing the same thing over and over again. I really like the movements I'm doing. And as I said, I'm working towards, building up that squat. Once I get to 4 plates, I'm not sure if I'm going to go any heavier than that. But it's because I've been able to progressively overload with the same movement over the course of that time. And that's why I've been able to get strong enough to do what I've been doing. Group fitness. Let's take a little side road on group fitness for a moment. I am a group fitness instructor. I guess I can say I'm not currently teaching. It was the first thing that I ever did, and it was cycling. And that's a different story. What I'm talking about when I say group fitness are the main studio classes, where they call them like strength classes, or things like I can't remember the name of the company where you can show up every 10 minutes and it's like a circuit, like circuit classes, or the studios, the individual standing studios, like Orange Theory. All right, that you are moving and timed and trying to do as many repetitions as possible. I'm not going to say CrossFit, but CrossFit does do some of this. I know that they do some strength training as well, but when you're trying to like snatch, as many snatches as you can in, 20 minutes, I'm not saying it's not good for you, but that is endurance training. You're not necessarily strength training on that. And you can get good muscle development endurance training. You guys will notice that in your programs, I program lower repetitions and higher repetitions for everybody because I want to make sure that we're hitting every muscle fiber in your body. But if you're just doing group fitness, this is why I'm bringing this up, and you're only doing endurance training, that's where the skinny fat comes from, that's why CrossFit's a little bit different because you're actually lifting some weight there. Olympic lifting kind of veers off into another story. But, group fitness classes that like Equinox and Crunch, and trust me, I've taught all of them for a very long time. They're fun. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do them. They're wonderful. They get people to be part of a community. They get you to work out. They get you to move. They teach you new things, but they can cause injury because you don't have somebody looking after you, right? And you're trying to do as many reps as possible in a certain amount of time. And there is zero progressive overload in those classes because they change them every single week. So just keep that in mind. Enjoy the group fitness. I might even pick up a class soon because I really miss it because it's a lot of fun. But just make sure that that's not the only thing that you're focusing on. You have to progressively overload to get stronger. All right. And then, the last thing really is just lifting random weights every session. But I know you guys don't do that because you're tracking your reps and your weights. Because if you don't track your weights and your reps, how do you know if you're progressing? All right. Do you guys have any questions on, common mistakes or anything else that you want me to cover in this section? Any questions about certain workouts that you're not sure if it's progressive overload or not?
I have a question.
Sure.
My routine just recently changed, and I just heard you say that like it's good to be like to keep the same routine. So, is it possible to go back to my old because I love it so much?
Liz, let's have a conversation on the side. All right.
Okay.
But, you're doing some of the same stuff in your routine that you were before. All right. It's not 100% different. That's not usually what I do. But you were on it for 8 weeks. And there's no way you were on it for any less because I don't program for less than that. So you did get progressive overload. All right. But again, I try to keep things exciting with people because most of my customers come to me or clients come to me and say that, are we going to change soon? I'm getting bored. And I have this conversation with them, but we'll talk about it on the side, Thomas. If you were really enjoying it that much, I have no problem having you progressively overload for longer. I think that's fantastic. If anybody else wants to work longer in the specific program they're with, I have absolutely no problem with that. as long as we've moved on to a straight up strength training program. Because sometimes when, certain of you come into the program, you haven't been lifting weights at all. So I might have thrown a full body workout at you or something a little bit different to get your body primed to be able to do proper strength training. All right. So this is a case by case basis. Does that help, Thomas?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thanks.
Awesome. I'm pretty flexible as long as it fits into the science, guys. So talk to me about anything. All right. Oh, there is one thing that I did leave out. I'm sorry, guys. Soreness. All right. Chasing soreness instead of strength is a bad idea. Soreness does not mean progress. All right. Consistency and consistent progression does. You do not have to be sore after every workout. If you did 2 or 3 exercises in your workout today and you were able to add repetitions on one, you were able to add weight on another, and you did slow eccentrics for the first time on another one, but you weren't sore the next day, you still progressively overloaded your body. You indicated to your body that it needs more muscle in that area. You're going to progress, you're going to get stronger. So don't chase the soreness. A lot of people come into the program going, oh, I'm not sore after week 3. You don't have to be, as long as you're pushing those weights. So, question. If you had the habit of changing up exercises and workouts frequently before we started working together, drop a thumbs up in the chat. Or say yes. I'm going to be really happy if no one says yes. Okay, Jeremy, changing up a lot. Very nice. Things are a little bit different now, right? I see the progress that you're making is freaking awesome. Okay. Now, does anybody have like a favorite group fitness class or group fitness studio from now or in the past? And I want to talk to you about whether that was progressive overload or not, and if strength played a part in your routine. I really enjoyed the Equinox classes that we taught. I mean, I taught them, but they were my favorite. But 99% of them were not progressive overload. We did have one class called Pure Strength, and I hated teaching it because you had to set up the room and it took like 45 minutes to set up. That was the only reason, but we brought in heavy weights. And it was the only time I've ever seen a group fitness studio do that. And it was because we were having a discussion in the group fitness department about this exact topic, progressive overload. So we had stations set up, and at each station we had weights from like 10 pounds all the way up to like 70, which you never see in a group fitness studio. And each state, we even had pull-up bars, which was awesome. So each station, which I believe there were 4 of, you rotated between the stations, and then each week you tried to, progressively overload a little bit with the help of your instructor. That is the only time I've really seen that in a group fitness studio. So if you're an Equinox member and you see Pure Strength on the schedule, check it out. It's a lot of fun. All right. All right. So one more interactive thing here, guys. I want a little quiz. It's called Overload or Overkill. All right. So I'm going to read a scenario, and you're going to drop it in the chat, overload or overkill. And there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people on the call. Participate, even in like one of them. All right. I'm only going to do like 3. Okay. So it's going to be overload, smart progression, or overkill, which is too much too soon. Okay. So the first scenario is adding 5 pounds to your deadlift each week. Is that overload or overkill? Now, if you're watching the chat, then you know what it is, right? Because everybody put the correct answer. Very nice, guys. Oh, Jeremy said overkill. All right. So it's actually overload. There's nothing wrong with that because you're adding weight week over week very slowly, right? We're not adding like 40 pounds at once. Correct. It does depend on if they kept their form, but you got to think about it like this. Adding the 5 pounds to your deadlift each week could be because you feel good about your form and you feel like you can do the heavier weight. Okay. How about jumping from 225 pounds to 275 pounds in one session? Is that overload or overkill? Kill. I like the abbreviations. You guys got it right. Then it's definitely overkill. Let's do one more. So repeating the same workout plan for 6 months, but increasing reps and weight. All right. You guys definitely got it down. It's definitely overload. All right. You're doing the same program for 6 months and slowly increasing your reps and your weight over time. Okay. So, the whole point of that, first, I wanted to have a little interaction, make these a little bit more fun, but the goal is small, sustainable progress, not big, sustainable jumps. That was the point that I was trying to make there. Okay. So, question. And you guys can answer this now. You can send me a message on the side. I would like to know everybody that's on the call, or even if you're watching this in the replay, in the chat, I want to know what's one thing that you're going to focus on improving more. Okay. Do you feel like your squats are ready for overload in a certain way? And tell me what kind of overload that is. Do you feel like, your chest presses are really killing it and you're going to work on focus on improving that? Do you feel like, you want to start working on time under tension? Thank you very much. That was a great answer. Do you think that maybe your deadlifts are struggling so that you're possibly going to apply another approach besides just adding weight? All right. I'm going to move on. If you guys want to drop it in the chat, that's cool. We did get one for time under tension. Working on your bench press. I like that. And if you want to talk about any of that, or if you're curious, what the right approach for you specifically would be to do that, let's have a conversation on the side, or even put it in your check-in form, and I'll talk about it under feedback. Time under tension. Believe you've been doing it wrong. Got it. Did today help you figure out that you're doing it wrong?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, awesome. I'm really happy that we did this because it's a question that I get a lot. I also got a yes. I want to work in time under tension. Sometimes I zone out and do things too quickly. Listen, I'm a human being as well. I'm guilty of that. I leave myself an hour and a half to work out. If I'm 5 minutes late, in my mind, I have to go faster because I'm not going to make it back upstairs in time for a call or something. So I try to slow myself down. But I do want you guys to know that, we're all going to make mistakes. We're not perfect, including myself. All right. And those are usually the times where I fuck something up as well. When we're moving too quickly and we need to get something done afterwards, or we have an appointment. So try to leave yourself, if you can, I know we're busy, a little extra time at the gym so that you can, accomplish these things, because time under tension is going to take you just a little bit longer. Okay, so closing thoughts here. You don't need new workouts every week. You need to progressively overload and get stronger at the things that you're already doing. Do you guys have any other questions or anything else you want to talk about? Was everything clear today? Cool. Thank you very much. I'm glad you guys really enjoyed it. Matthew, did you have a question? All clear? No. Okay. You said yes, like good. All right. Got it. I thought you said yes, I had a question. All right, guys. Very good. Thank you very much for joining me today. I actually really enjoyed this one. I like getting into scientific stuff. It's one of my favorite parts about doing this. So what I'd like you guys to do now, and then, whether you're watching it now or on the replay, is, send me a message on some topics that you'd like to talk about. If there's anything that, you might not be sure if you're doing right, or you want more information on, and this could be anything from mindset, stress, anxiety, workouts, plans, things that you're doing outside, in your general life that you think might be affecting your workout, time management, all of these things we can talk about. Time management is actually a really good one. I think I want to do a whole presentation on time management because a lot of us struggle with that. And it's something I think that I've gotten a lot better at. So I might want to share that with you guys. But send me messages on things that you guys want to talk about. I definitely want to make sure that we're doing things that are interesting to you. All right. Thank you guys for coming.